We have a quorum and legal notices have been posted. Is there a motion to open the meeting? Moved by Ms. Noble, second.
Second, Ms. Stoddard.
Second by Ms. Stoddard, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. All right. We will start by, we don't need to wait to open the meeting. We'll start by going to our public comments on published agenda items. We will start with our public speakers. First is Lamar Jefferson. Lamar Jefferson.
Is it online or?
It says in person.
Says in person.
Mr. Jefferson here. Last call, Lamar Jefferson. All right, we'll move to the next person. Jamar Jefferson. Mar Jefferson. Mar Jefferson. Okay, we have Mr. John Causey, it's a virtual appearance. Mr. Causey, are you with us?
Casey, I think it is.
Hey, yes,
Sorry.
I'm
Casey, I'm
here
sorry.
joining by WebEx. Can you all hear me in the room?
Yes, yes, we can.
We can hear, but I believe we have to be able to.
Because it's a public hearing, you have to be seen. You have to turn on your camera.
Yeah, sure. One moment. Can you guys see me at this point?
No.
We cannot.
My video's on the WebEx.
There we go.
So
We can see Mr. Casey.
I skipped.
Done. There you Jefferson.
We'll get you as soon as that.
We'll come back to you. Okay, Mr. Casey, you have 2 minutes.
Okay.
Hang on a second, I'll let you when to start my clock. 3 minutes, I'm sorry.
But we're just starting public comment.
Great. Well, public commenters, everyone, sorry, I'm running a little late, it's the traffic. Keyword.
Okay, Mr. Casey, you can start.
Okay, thank you for the time, committee. I just have some questions as a resident of the state of Texas and obviously of Dallas County around some of the voting items and some registration items, voter roll accuracy. So I'd like to address some of these questions to this commission and would obviously love to understand if we can get some answers.
Let me interrupt you for a second. This is for public comment, so if you have questions, we can't entertain questions. This is just your opportunity to speak. Just want to make that clear.
Okay, if I'd like to address questions and obviously with the intention of seeking feedback and answers to those questions for committee members, what's the best forum to do that?
Mr. Casey, I think you can certainly ask as many questions as you can, but at this time, we cannot answer those questions during the meeting. Depending on your questions, somebody in the election department or this commission may get back with you at a later time through email correspondence. But before you start, would you state your name and your address? And then you can.
Sure. Yeah, okay, thank you for the clarity. My name is John Casey.
Start over again, hang on a second.
Sure.
Secretary, I'll time it.
Okay, so is this working? Okay, great. Mr. Casey, we're gonna start your time over so you have
I got it.
full amount of time. Great. So go ahead and state your name and your address, sir.
Great, thank you, committee. So my name is John Casey. My address is 3611 Congress Avenue, Dallas, Texas, 75219. So I'm going to state my questions for the committee with the understanding that this is not the forum to receive answers for those questions. However, I would like it to be on the record, right, which is why I'm joining this call today. Question first and foremost around registration and voter roll accuracy. Question for the committee is, will the county commit to removing ineligible registrations if proven ineligible from voter rolls? Question two is, will the county provide, and the county here being Dallas County, provide transparency such as offering voter rolls for free or for a nominal cost to ensure fraudulent registrations do not reappear if they exist in the first place? Third and final question on registration is the county willing to dump the entire voter roll and require eligible voters to show up in person at the registrar's office to re-register with a valid ID? Moving to some questions on machines and hand counting used in the election practices today. Will the county commit to removing electric voting equipment if it can be proven unreliable? Will the county commit to using only paper ballots counted by hand on future elections? Lastly, if the county is unwilling to rid themselves of or abandon electronic voting equipment in favor of hand counting ballots, is the county willing to hand count the paper ballots generated by the machines? This is obviously something that's critical to ensuring the ballots and the total ballots match the number of voters checked in to vote on machine tapes. Third section of questions is really around security of our elections and specifically addressing drop boxes. Will the county or equivalent commit to removing drop boxes that leave elections vulnerable to malicious actors? This is a particularly big threat if the county in question is within a state that has banned ballot harvesting. Last question is really around transparency and reporting guidelines for public confidence. Will Dallas County, excuse me one second. Right, so the last question being, so because some of the counties within the state, right, are not able to commit to reporting the votes by certain timeframes, will Dallas County commit to waiting for the rest of the state to report totals, right, at the same time?
Mr. Casey, I'm sorry, but you're out of time. Thank you for addressing the commission today. Our next public speaker is Lamar Yaka Jefferson. Please state your name and address. Whatever you'd like to say.
I'm right here. You can sit right there, Mr. Jefferson.
How you doing? My name is Lamar Yaka Jefferson. Friends call me Yaka. I'm here to make a formal complaint.
Please state your address also.
Oh, 3700 Ridge Drive, Dallas, Texas. I'm here to make a formal complaint against Michael Scarpello in his official capacity for authorized acts and malfeasance and malfeasance, intentionally and deliberately in the regular course of business, failed in his fiduciary duties, and committed a Class 3 felony in his violations of conspiracy to deprive me of my right to vote and my right to association. On November the 18th of 2022, I came to his office, which I also provided my Google timeline showing that I was here between 2 and 3 o'clock, and also did an affidavit of fact and truth under the penalty of perjury. I provided to him. I have a recorded conversation of Michael Scarpello with me informing him that they made a mistake, not once, but twice, in registering me to vote, which is called a deprivation of right. He has refused in violation of many laws, including participating in election fraud. An election fraud consists of election fraud under Texas Election Code 276.01. It's defined election fraud to include any act that is intended to result in casting or account of legal votes or affecting the outcome of the election. He intentionally knew that I was running for office for place 7 in City Council in Dallas, and that if he did not give me a hearing as requested 7 times, an oral hearing to designate his assistant and that gentleman right there, I made requests for a hearing. They wrote down, I also sent a writing, I sent in multiple affidavits. In fact, I called him dozens of times to try to get my registration back. They corrected it like he did my twin brother. We came in, they only registered one of us. We came back in February, They then took all my information and put it up under my brother's name again, which is a violation. They didn't properly store, pursuant to your own Texas election code, any registration, including duplicates. I have been irreparably harmed by the actions of Michael Scarpello, including when he sent and conspired with the city of Dallas to send in an unlawful certificate of registration. They did not subpoena. They are not my agent. He had no authority, lawful authority, to send a registration certificate to agents of the city of Dallas. It is a class 3 felony for him to engage in such behavior. He's refused to set hearings as I have requested by his people in this administration. I have been violated. My constitutional rights have been violated. He has committed nefarious activities, and I demand that my registration reflect November the 18th when I came in.
Jefferson, thank you.
Everyone up here is up under oath and has an oath of office, and I demand that y'all protect my rights to vote in the association. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, our next speaker is Jamar J.J. Jefferson. You can say this.
How you doing? My name is Jamar J.J. Jefferson. I live at 3700.
I didn't say this at the beginning, but when we run out of time, I'll just tell you you're out of time, unless you want a warning, like 30 seconds or whatever, I'll do that for you too. You want a warning?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm good.
And then when I tell you you're out of time, you'll just finish your sentence. That'll be great. And that's for everybody who's gonna speak. All right, so thank
And I said
you.
something before you start, it will be helpful for, speakers if they can, like, time clock there so that people can pay attention. They do it at the city. And when I speak.
I have, like,
He's-
just so when you get to 30 seconds, I'll just do this.
Okay, I apologize, we just don't have that capability here.
And, you know, I looked at the budget, we need to find the money to make sure that the public is included in all aspects of our government. Let me know when I go.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. How you doing? My name is Jamar J.J. Jefferson. I reside at 3700 Reese here in this great city of Dallas. Texas Election Code, specifically Chapter 16, created this board responsibility to oversee and regulate aspects of this election, including resolving election-related complaints and disputes, and provide access to election data. The Texas Election Board plays a critical role in ensuring fair, transparent, and open, secure elections in this state. Election fraud is happening in a Democratic-controlled city in the county of Dallas. 2 black men, one a registered Democrat and one a registered Republican, who are twins, are being denied the opportunity to serve in this community in an elected position because the election interference of Michael Scarpello for Lamar Jefferson. The mayor's running unopposed because of it, and my twin brother has been denied due process of law by 2 individuals, Billy Ray Johnson and Michael Scarpello. Other actors are conspiring, but Michael Scarpello have broken his oath of office and violated the Texas Election Code. You all have the authority to hear this matter. It's really sad that in a Democratic-controlled city and county, we're not getting the justice that we deserve unless we are killed. Black men already have limited opportunities, generational cycles of poverty and disadvantage, lack of access to quality education and healthcare, discrimination in the workplace, limited economic opportunities to contracts, barriers that impede progress and advancement, policies and practices that perpetuate discrimination and inequalities. We must have leaders. Was that 30 seconds?
No, it wasn't. It just a mistake.
What I got, so I know I was on the road.
You're at 1 minute and 15 seconds.
There you go. Barriers that impede progress and advancement, policies and practices that perpetuate discrimination and inequalities. We must have leaders that support initiatives that promote equal opportunity and access and inclusion. Could you please get off the phone, County Judge? Nancy Nicholas had a situation, who was a good friend of mine, who the entire world went against because she said something about chocolate city, which I didn't find racist. She's one of the hardest working people, and everybody rallied against her for saying chocolate's out of town. Election fraud is happening under your watch, and everybody is quiet because it's 2 black men that you feel don't deserve the constitutional rights as others who are not white and who is not either in a marginalized community that you acknowledge. I am Jamar Jefferson. I will not tolerate any act of unlawlessness when it comes to the Constitution. Me and my brother registered to vote on November 18th, and on the 14th, I checked, and they only registered me. I checked over 1,000 people, and they made a mistake. It is your duty to rectify the situation, or you are conspiring in election fraud.
Mr. Jefferson, you're out.
Thank you.
All right, our next speaker is Ms. Carla Williams Grover. Carla Williams Grover.
Sorry, I have eye infection.
But
It has to do with the,
State your name and.
my name is Carla Loreno Frogger. My address is 6845 Amber Avenue, Dallas, Texas, 75217. My concerns for, I'm an election judge. My concerns even began today when I went to set my location up. I was missing some things, and I was told in training that I had 1 hour to set up. First of all, I had to move the stuff that was in the room. That could be 45 minutes, then able to set up. But they're saying we have an hour. We were told in training that hour, they've done it, and they know it can be done in an hour. Come to our location and see what's going on. As well as, I was told I could have 2 people. Then they called me and said, oh, you can have 3 people to work your location. I employed 8, and I did that for a reason, because next year, I'm not gonna be able to find anybody to work for me if they're not working now. So what I did was split shift all those people. They're not all working all day. I split shift them so I could hold on to them. We have to do something to keep people working. If we're gonna deny us ability to service these locations, it's hard for us to get people to come out and work as it is. So I split shift my people so that I can hold on to at least 8 of them. I've been called and chastised about that. I've been told this, that, and the other about that. I don't understand. If there's 1 person working 8 hours of the day, what's the difference if there's 2 people working those 8 hours of the day? I don't understand. I called Mr. Scarpello when I initially got that information. He said he was gonna get back with me. What I got was calling me, chastising me. Mr. Scarpello returned my call, and I called him on his personal cell phone. I just want it to be understood that we are out here working in the trenches. We are trying to do what we can do, get everybody voting. I don't care who it is, but we can't do it if we don't have enough people. You give me 2 people, then those 2 go outside to do a curbside, who's on the inside? You give me 2 people, and I got 4 people standing in line to be checked in, how can I do it? I'm just asking that they understand. They say they're going by the numbers. The numbers don't really mean anything when you have people that sometimes take 30 minutes to vote and other people only take 2. Thank you.
thank you, ma'am. Good luck with the item, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, our last speaker, at least on the list I have, is Norma Kimbrough. Kimbrough?
Hello, my name is Norma Kimbrough, and I reside at 1521 Tomble Creek Drive, and that's in DeSoto. And I am here, I am an election day judge. And I'm here to speak because of when I received an email that said that I could only have 2 people because of the numbers. And I was assigned 2 locations instead of 1. I called to try to speak with someone about it. I couldn't speak with anyone. I kept calling. But anyway, 2 people at a voting location is just absurd. It's absurd because we have different things that need to be done. And again, we have to sometimes go outside, especially in my location. A lot of people want curbside voting. And when you have curbside voting, you still have to have people on the inside to take care of the people that are coming in. I don't know how you all do your numbers. However, if someone would just take the time and come and see what we go through at these voting centers, which I love doing. But I just feel like, we should be allotted the number of people that we need, to work these vote centers. And people have questions, they have it's all type of things that go on in a vote center where it should be more considered. And again, I called to speak with, Mr. Scarpello, could never get to him, nobody would let me speak to him. It's just my concern. And, that's just my take. I feel like it should be a better consideration on that part. The other part is, when I went to training and I was advised about the new pay system, the ADP card, I wasn't allowed to ask questions. What I was told was, listen to the spiel, and then my spiel should answer all your questions. It didn't answer all my questions at all, and I was told it would be instructions inside the envelope that we'll receive. Well, I think that's an injustice too, because if I have questions and I should get them answered, and then when my people ask me, I can have the answers for them. That's my take.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening.
This concludes our public speakers that we're having in the people. So we'll now move on to our discussion items. And the first discussion item is report on the forensic audit of the 2020 presidential election. Mr. Scarpello, would you like to see that?
Well, good afternoon. So I'm going to report on the forensic audit of the 2020 presidential election. Then I'm going to talk about some of our tactical plan solutions that have addressed those issues. So the purpose of the audit was to ensure, the voters have confidence in the system. So this was driven by the state, the Secretary of State's office. They audited two counties, Republican controlled, Carrollton, Collin, and then two Democratic controlled, Harris and Dallas. And this is a new organization within the Secretary of State's office. It's the Forensic Audit Unit. I think they have 8 full-time staff members. They did a comprehensive audit of our paper and electronic election records, and they came here, they did that virtually and in person multiple times. And our staff fully cooperated in interviews in order to piece together a narrative about the 2020 processes. Because one of the things we have to remember is that a lot of the staff that were here in 2020 are no longer here. So our staff, existing staff, worked with the Secretary of State's office to kind of piece those, put everything back together. And I think they did a pretty good job of getting a clear picture of what took place in 2020. So the topics covered, as you can see listed on the screen: machine security, voter registration, all of the typical things that you would cover in pretty robust coverage. There was a final report consisting of 359 pages released on December 19th, 2022. The key findings, they said there was, for Dallas County, there were some positive comments and best practices mentioned about Dallas County. And there was over 40 issues reported and 15 major issues reported. And we're going to review those on the following slide quickly. But before we do, I just want to say a few words about the tactical plan solutions, because that's a part of what we've done to address those issues that were found in 2020. So as you know, we're in the middle of a multi-year business process re-engineering effort, with an emphasis on sweeping change, innovation, and modernization to our facilities, equipment, technology, hardware, software applications, processes and procedures, and our organizational design. So those re-engineering efforts are documented in our tactical plan. And the tactical plan was developed last year. And what we're doing now is we're analyzing the outcomes from the last election and listening to feedback. We're monitoring legislation and changes in county policies, et cetera. And then we're updating the tactical plan as needed. We revise and document our processes as needed. And we tie our tactical plan items to our county objectives and key results, and in future to our budget performance measures. That's a new initiative by the county this year. And then we update our election deadline assignment and task engine. This is our tool that we use to feed our staff. These are the things that need to be done to conduct an election. The tactical plan solutions listed on the following slides address the findings addressed in the forensic audit. So I'm just going to cover these quickly. So the first one, and first major one, was there was a failure to include one vote center in the final tabulation results, resulting in 106 ballots not being counted. In other words, there was a whole vote center not counted. So tactical plan number 157, we revised our tabulation process to include a step where after the operator verifies the USBs are present, the operator also verifies all USBs show as returned in the system. So it's an accounting, if you will. There was 318 missed provisional ballots that were discovered in February of 2021 after the election was certified. After reviewing, 63 of those ballots would have counted. So tactical plan 176 talks about how we revise that process of handling provisional ballots post-election. Of the provisional ballots that were processed, 895 were accepted, but only 813 were counted, resulting in 82 ballots not being counted. So tactical plan 177 talks about chain of custody and how we move those ballots, those provisional ballots through the organization so that we're not losing ballots. Number 4, vote history records show 21 voters had received credit for voting by mail, yet those ballots were found in unopened carrier envelopes, and that's weren't counted. So a variety of tactical plans, 70, 76, 116, 119, revising the inbound mail ballot processing. And that's one where it was a major reorganization. In fact, that's the first major reorganization we did when we got here, was to revise the way we handle mail ballots. There were many discrepancies in the number of voters checked into the poll books versus the number of ballots counted. Now, I would tell you this happens all the time. This is common, where you have the number of voters that check into the poll book and the number of voters and the number of ballots that you have. You want to in the perfect world be balanced, but you don't always balance because sometimes, people walk out with their ballots, things like that. And so there's a variety of reasons why you don't balance, but what you try to do is put into place those procedures to try to minimize those voter errors and poll worker errors. Number 6, records show that 76,000 ballots were transferred from the early voting ballot board to central count, but 78,147 ballots were tabulated in central count. Once again, the new chain of custody forms and better tracking of what we did. In other words, this ended up not being ballots magically appeared, but it was an accounting issue where we didn't do a good job of accounting, keeping track of our records. Number 7, we provided 4 sources of data showing mail ballot statistics, but sources were inconsistent and unmatched the canvas. Once again, a new chain of custody forms, a new canvas procedure, and I mentioned this later on, but it used to be that the canvas consisted of, here are the results from the poll books, and here are the results from the ballots, and we'll call that good. And there was never a cross-reference between the two. We never balanced the books. So we put in place a very comprehensive canvas procedure consisting of pages and pages and pages of spreadsheets balancing those books so that we can make sure that our statistics are accurate. Number 8, county records show major discrepancy in tracking mail ballots requested, returned, and ultimately counted. Once again, those chain of custody, exit tracking, those same procedures address that issue. There were difficulties in processing a high number of ballots due to staff turnover. I think the manager of that department left, right, prior to the election. So we really focused on simplifying the procedures, documenting the procedures, and cross-training our permanent staff so that we, the idea is take things out of people's heads, put them down on paper, have a plan, and stick to the plan. Number 10, e-poll books created phantom voters where a voter checked in and the poll book checked in a different voter, affecting 188 confirmed voters and an undetermined number of other voters due to incomplete records. ESNet's corrected that software bug that took place in 2020. ESNet's being our vendor, poll vendor. 994 mail voters were miscoded, resulting in some persons under 65 incorrectly receiving a mail ballot. So we developed number 67, implementation of a new batching system designed to detect human errors to prevent that sort of entry. But
Question, as it relates to item number 10, those phantom voters.
Yeah.
Was this discovered during the voting process or after the voting, after the tabulation or the canvassing?
it was discovered during the election, and in fact, the poll workers at that location created this report called Phantom Voters, where they came up with that term, I don't know. And so they worked on the counting of that in 2020. The Secretary of State's office had to research into, put a lot of research into that, figure out what the heck was going on there.
Excuse me, just for clarification. The person who was going to that particular voting machine did have an opportunity to vote. And these phantom voters were not actually counted as votes, correct?
That's correct. So in other words, John Smith came in, received the ballot, voted the ballot was counted, but on the e-poll books, there was not credit for John Smith, there was credit for Jane Doe.
So how was John Smith's vote counted if it was credited to Jane Doe?
Because the credit that you receive in the poll book is separate and apart from the ballot that is actually counted. Once you receive the ballot, it is divorced from that record, that voter record.
But doesn't that mean that when John Doe looks at his history of voting, that it will show that he did not vote in that particular election?
That is correct. And I believe that was corrected post-election. They were given that credit, and that's this list of phantom voters helped track that down.
So with them being phantom voters, how do you know that it was John Smith versus Harry Washington?
I don't know all the details. I think we have to get some of our staff members to walk through that with you, which we can do. But that was taken care of back in 2020. Okay. Number 12, there was no emergency response or contingency plans or plan to notify SOS in the event of emergency. This last year, we established an election security plan as well as a continuity of operations plan. Number 13, poll workers failed to consistently fill out the available chain of custody forms. Once again, a poorly designed form is not well used, so we redesigned our forms, and we haven't had any problems since in the last several elections.
Or I'm going to ask, are those forms, are they electric forms or are they paper?
Mostly paper forms.
At any point, you considering going to electronic form?
We are digitizing everything we can as fast as we can. Some things lend themselves better to that and some do not. Number 14, records show that equipment was delivered to wrong locations. We've revised our delivery procedures to include GIS-defined routes, created a live delivery tracking platform where we can monitor the drivers and use certain checklists so we can check to make sure that they performed properly. Because keep in mind, those drivers are hired from their contractors that we bring in. DCD was unable to locate. Sure.
I don't want to keep doing this, but as it relates to those wrong locations, aren't the equipment kind of put in a case, locked, and it's labeled with the address that it's supposed to go to?
That is correct. And some of that equipment, that whole big case was delivered to the wrong location.
even though it has the correct address. on it.
Correct.
That's a training issue a logistical training issue for those delivery guys.
That's correct. As well as paperwork issues, make sure that they're doing their checklists. Number 15, we were unable to locate during the audit, they were unable to locate multiple boxes of records listed on the inventory sheet, boxes we should have had, but we didn't from 2020. And so, I'll talk about this later, but we're doing a whole new inventory control for our records future. And so I'm going to pause there. Any other, because I'm going to move on to the next report. But is there any questions about the audit? Okay. So this report I'm going to combine because it lends itself well to talk about the 22 general elections and then our various items in our 2023 tactical plan and then our preparations for the May joint election. But before I do, I want to just talk about some of our early 2022 challenges and how going into the general election, those challenges were lessened, if you will. So last year, in early 2022, there was a delayed state, county, and local redistricting, and then thus the late re-precincting. That's completed. We didn't have to deal with that going into November. There was the new Vietnamese language requirement at the end of 2021. We completed that, well before the November election. There was delayed completion of elections framing and warehouse facility. And by the time the election rolled around, we had that mostly done.
So let's go back to item number 2, accelerate redrawing of precinct lines, where it says mostly completed. Are we still working with at the city level? Is that the part that's not completed?
That's correct. So at the city level, so we did the election precincts at the county level. And then there was a phase 1 of cities, those cities that turned into us. And then there was a phase 2 when more cities turned into us. And now for this election, there's a phase 3 of even more cities that have turned in their lines to us. So every time cities turn in their new lines, we have to do kind of reshuffling of those precincts and sub-precincts.
And can they turn those in every election, or do they have a time period where they have to do it?
They do not have a defined time period that I'm aware of. Otherwise, they would have been all at the same time. Later writing SOS guides. So SB 1 was passed in this, September 21. The guidance provided by the Secretary of State's office, the election advisories describing how to implement that SB 1, that trickled in over months. In fact, we had 46 communications in the last 80 days prior to the election, the last one coming 2 days before the election. Every time one of those communications comes in, you have to look at your processes, revise your processes, et cetera. So that late arriving guidance was very difficult for us in every county, but that was completed well before the November election, so it wasn't a problem for November. New records management tasks, very many lawsuits that we're involved in. That's continuing to be ongoing. We said a deposition all day last week, and several of my staff members. This onslaught of PIA requests, this is ongoing and problematic. It takes a lot of resources. And then the SOS forensic audit, that was complete prior to the election. It wasn't a problem.
So, Ellen, how do you address those PIA requests?
Well, we're working through a new, and I'll talk about this a little later about if I answer your question now. So we're paper driven, right? And so all of our records are in boxes and boxes. So what we're trying to do is to digitize, create, digital records of all of our election records so that we can properly store them and we can pull them up quickly.
So let me clarify my question. So if someone submits a PIA request, it's in paper and you address it in paper and the records they're wanting are also in paper.
That's correct.
Okay. So you're basically answering my question because you are digitizing those records, which makes them easier.
That's on our list of things to do, yes.
So, going forward with that, do you have an internal PIA department, or are you working with a civil liaisons?
The civil DA is still in charge of that, but we created a a new department, our HR and records department this last year. Mr. Robert Hurd is in charge of that, and he's doing a fantastic job. He's got, his assistant Denise is helping him, and so we're trying to corral those records, doing it in a more efficient fashion. So in going into last year's elections, the spring elections, we had back-to-back countywide elections, unprecedented number of countywide elections. That was completed. We didn't have to worry about that going into November. Temp labor and poll worker shortages were severe last year. That was resolved through the hard work of these two to my right, by them recruiting poll workers going into the November election. COVID-19 concerns were mostly, they weren't problematic going into November. Cybersecurity threats are ongoing but mitigated. Misinformation and disinformation, that's always ongoing, but we found some ways to mitigate some of that. And then the political climate and controversy, of course, that's always going to be around these days where we're at in elections. So, general overview of the election, we had 52 early voting locations, 462 election day locations, total ballots cast 629,000. Early of those, 391 voted early, 391,000, 23,000 voted by mail, 213 voted in person on election day. Total turnout was 44%.
How does that turnout rate compare to other counties across Texas?
Compared to other counties, I'm not sure. I don't have that off the top of my head. I know that compared to,
Seems up compared to previous elections.
it is, it was. Typically, a gubernatorial would be in the 30s. This was at 44. So I'm going to move on. I'm going to talk about the 2022 general election, the 2023 tactical plan, and the 2023 joint election, kind of department by department or team by team. For our executive team, the use of analytics. So we project voter turnout at vote centers. We add some padding to make sure that we efficiently but safely distribute election and equipment and labor. This was a collaborative effort. We met with political parties, with SEAC, government agencies, activists, get everyone's take on what turnout's going to be like. The actual turnout, and then we take that, we project not only overall, but at every location, and in fact by the hour. And so what we do then is we then monitor. So projecting is one thing, but then you have to monitor. So we monitor by the hour, and then we react if we need to. Oh, this is a hot race that we didn't anticipate. We need to send some more equipment. So actual voter turnout in the general election was under our projected numbers countywide. I think we had projected even higher. And we over projected and under projected per vote center. And some of them we were right on, so but everything was within the margin of error. There was nothing missed where we had some shortages because we under projected. We monitored and modified our plans as needed. For our tactical plan for 2023, continued refinement of the projection models. We met with SMU, statisticians and mathematicians, showed them how we did our thing, and they had no corrections. They said, it's great, you guys are right on track. 2023 joint election. In fact, after this meeting this afternoon, we're going to meet with cities and school districts to get their input on how hot their races are to see. We made our initial projections, and now we're going to kind of see if we need to make some adjustments. Personnel improvements. We have a lot of new employees. Those new employees are gaining experience, and our experienced employees are starting to buy into this culture of change. We had less COVID and weather-related loss of hours, more documented defined procedures, which give our employees more comfort in knowing what they're supposed to do, and better collaboration with our campaign agencies to recruit quality for that last November election was much better than in the past. Our 2023 tactical plan, continued refinement of our E-Data and our team procedures, and then the new records, HR and records department I talked about to help improve our employee relations. And then for 2023 joint election, the expanded use of county employees for recurring jobs. Elections, and then on election day, we were fearing the worst, but election day was very calm. And so we had virtually no problems with poll watchers on election day, so we were glad to see that. So the 2023 tactical plan, more thorough analysis of our help desk tickets. We're really reading every single one of those tickets. What do we need to do to refine our processes to prevent, issues and to respond to them more timely? Enhancements to our election security plan. You'll notice a note there, it says OKR number 3.15. So every county department's supposed to develop their objectives and key results. I think we've got like 15 of them, something like that. And that's something the county is pushing now to, what is our major objectives for the year? And so you'll see some of these OKRs identified here, or all of our OKRs are identified in this plan, but you can see that that's just a tiny subset of all the things that we're doing. So we're going to continue that OKR development. That's why I just wanted to bring your attention to that. So that's OKR number 3.15, our security plan. County officials are planning, and for the future, so this is our 2023 tactical plan, they're planning to do a desktop exercise, which includes not only here, but then downtown. If something major would happen, involving the judge, the sheriff, everyone involved in that desktop exercise, similar to like we had for cybersecurity last year. For the 2023 joint election, typically for these joint elections or any election, frankly, anything within the 100-foot marker, the county handles. Anything outside of the 100-foot marker, the local PD handles. The sheriff's office this year is going to handle all of them. So they're stepping up, adding more presence on election day to try to address the issues before they happen. Human resource improvements, our new HR records team. 2022, we got the approval of the formation of that. 2023, we hired Robert and his team. We're finalizing we're in the final phase of our reorganization and reclassification efforts. We've done it in multiple phases throughout the last 2 years, and we're developing the final phase in conjunction with Mr. Heichel. We're developing, this is another OKR, developing our comprehensive HR management program, including the revision and documentation of all of our HR policies and procedures, the development of employee assessments and evaluations, the development of better training for our employees. That's another OKR, using LinkedIn Learning and other things to train our folks. And then we just passed a CJIS, Criminal Justice Information System audit, that was taken about how we handle our records for our employees. 2023 joint elections, we're looking for increased participation by our managers, as we're trying to get our managers to understand every dollar they spend costs somebody. And so the more they see those dollars, instead of just saying, oh, I need 10 employees, we say, well, 10 employees at what cost? Do you really need 10? How about 7? That sort of thing. And so driving those decisions down to the lower level. Records management improvements. And for the technical plan, we're going to do inventory of our election records, new records, and equipment storage management process. We're hoping to purchase or piggyback on someone else's electronic records management system. And then digitization of our records, like we talked about before, and refinement of our security plans for the joint election. Even though we're not digitized, we do have a new methodology of taking those paper records, storing them to make them easier to access for those PIAs. Our administration team, payroll improvements. So in 2022, we made a lot of progress and improved inventory of how we collect our timesheets at the end of the day. We changed from manual calculations, literally using calculators, to formulated spreadsheets. We collaborated with the auditor's office to develop automatic import into Oracle. So we're moving data electronically. And we collaborated with the treasurer's office, and we paid our workers within 3 weeks and 2 days, which is right in line with where this was for November, where it normally is.
And I do have a question regarding this May election and paying employees. I'm sure you're aware, just like all other departments, that the auditor's office is moving to a new version of Oracle. Have you met with them as it relates to making sure that you all are triaging that so that in the event there are any issues with the treasurer, the auditor's office going live, it doesn't have a negative impact on those election workers getting paid? And are you also having a backup, should I say a backup plan or manual process in the event that there does happen to be an issue that move to Oracle Fusion?
Your question couldn't be more timely because that's the next bullet point. So keep in mind, we have to, historically, we've collected timesheets on paper. We've processed those on paper, moved it to digital, and then moved it to, from basically system one is collecting of data. System two is massaging the data, cross-referencing it with our whole worker management system. And system three is how to pay people. So we fixed the stuff between 2 and 3. Well, this year we're implementing a new electronic time clock solution. So our people will be keeping their time on their electronic poll books rather than on paper. We do have paper backups in case we have problems. And so that will speed up the process of getting that data from them. In fact, on election day, we'll be starting the process, right?
Mr. Scarpelli, county IT and the auditor's office has reviewed that process and signed off on it.
They've been involved in every step of the way, including county administration, auditors, treasurers, purchasing, everyone's been involved. Daryl Martin's been driving that effort and doing a great job. We were going to have everyone, last year we signed everyone up for direct deposit. That ended up not happening. The auditor's office decided not to do direct deposit for everyone for some legitimate reasons. This year, rather than going to the direct deposit, we've contracted, because of the Oracle Fusion conversion, the auditor's office is way too busy to deal with us. And so we've gone to an outside contractor, ADP. They're going to process our payroll. And then they're going to issue debit cards. And so the way it will work, rather than 3 weeks after the election, someone coming in, hey, come down to the office to pick up your check, or wait for it to be delivered via mail and maybe get lost in the mail, which happens quite often. On election day, we will deliver to every worker a debit card packet. And so then they, just like you get any card you do, you call and activate it. And then probably within a week or so, that card will be populated with their pay. So we're gonna go from 3 weeks and 2 days down to probably about a week to pay people using the debit cards.
Is that debit card something that if they're a continued worker and they're gonna work election after election after election, we won't have to reissue that? They'll have it.
That's
in the
correct.
system. We can just reload it.
That's correct.
Is that for early voting also?
That is not for early voting. That is for election day. Early voting, they're still considered county employees.
I'm sorry, hang on a second. Ladies, please. This is not a time for comment. This is his presentation.
So for our communications team, we designed new internal and external voter vote center signage. I'm sure you've all seen it. We increased our voluntary deputy registrar outreach, website improvements to our website navigation, changing the look and feel of that website. The addition of Vietnamese translated pages, every single page we're not using Google Translate, we translated with our translator. And then our new rumor control page. And that's to address these, these crazy rumors that go out. And then so every time we hear a rumor, we put the truth up right away. And we had 13.
That's the disinformation, misinformation.
That's correct. And we had 13,000 people view that page in October and November. Communications website usage compared to 2018 to 22 it was up 236% during the registration period. It was up 258% during the early voting period. And this one, I put an asterisk on it because I'm still not sure I believe it. It said we're up 2,000, using Google Analytics, said we're up 2,000% on election day. Voter awareness campaign, I'm sure you guys, certainly Judge Jenkins is aware, Commissioners Court generously gave us $605,000 for a voter awareness campaign. We had commercials on Facebook, streaming TV, broadcast TV, YouTube, and radio. And the feature of that was that this is how we do it video. And I'm sure you guys have all seen it, but I'm gonna play it just in case you haven't.
Hang on one second, before he plays that, it's a little after 1 now. And we've got some sandwiches for you and maybe salads, I'm not sure what we've got. For the members of the executive committee, if you want a sandwich or something.
You want a break for 5?
Yeah, if everyone wants to grab their sandwich, we can even play it while they're grabbing a sandwich, if they're hungry. Just say that, because I'm hungry and I'm about to go get me a sandwich.
Y'all bringing up everybody, surely y'all not gonna eat in front of your guests. Yes, they are. So disrespectful. They don't. Makes you figure that out? Oh, no, but I'm figuring out a lot of things. We not here.
Audio.
And it's, you can't get it.
It should be easy. And in Dallas County, this is how we do it. We've got over 45 vote centers during the early voting period and over 400 elections. You can vote at any location in the county. Find a vote center near you and check on wait times with our online tool. This is how we do it. Now, let's see how you do it.
No, I know. I'll make some. He told me he could start. We were going.
Yeah.
So did they give you a sandwich? No sandwiches for the people. Would you like a sandwich? Excuse me.
Judge comes back, can you talk us through this?
No sandwiches.
Mr. Pella, who'd you use to produce those videos?
ABI Alpha Business Images.
They have a contract with the county, they're our media consultants.
So the health, which when it came to COVID.
Health and Human Services, or
What it,
It's our work.
Impression of policy. On the break right now.
as soon as the judge comes back, I'm gonna have Nick walk through the statistics from ABI that kind of talks about the reach of this campaign. There's the judge. So Judge, we're gonna have, Nick is our communications manager. He's gonna just give us a brief, rundown of the success of that campaign according to ABI, our consultant.
Yeah, if y'all can hear me, just wanted to clarify some of these definitions. So impressions are for your, Facebook display streaming and YouTube. Those are when you go to a website and you see an ad on the side or at the top, that's what counts as an impression. So what we really pay attention to are, for the digital stuff, the click-through rates. Who saw the ad on Facebook or while you're surfing the internet in other ways? Who saw that ad, who clicked on it, which led to directly to our website. I think we can kind of watch them navigate our website, what they click on, and stuff like that. So the clicks are, they kind of inform us how successful it was. I mean, we like to see the impressions, but I think a lot of us are we kind of put blinders on when it comes to those ads, because we've got pretty used to them. But I mean, the click-through rate was actually really, really good for those. The impressions though for TV and radio, those are your Nielsen polls, those how many people watch it, those are kind of those guesstimations, right? So that's why I prefer digital, just because I can actually see who interacts with it. I mean, a lot of people who watch TV or listen to the radio will try to change the station in between radios as commercials come on, or TBS. But the click-through rates tells us a lot, and it's actually really high. And I have a full report from ABI, and if any of y'all would like to see it, I'm happy to send that on to y'all. Do you have any other questions about just any of those kind of what a click is? What number of spots are how many times it ran? So that 398 broadcast television, it was across 4 stations, 3 news stations, your ABC, NBC, those, but also Telemundo, and we had the cable Vietnamese, I think it's Viet TV. So that's just how many times the ad ran for our early. I think we started them 2 days before early voting, those ads, up until election day.
Just say based on the voter turnout, the increase from previous years, I think that this was a wide span by both Dallas County and a successful campaign by the elections department. What is the anticipated future on this? Are we going to continue to do something very similar to this? Are we gonna, now that we see what it does, are we gonna up our game? What's the plan?
I think going into the next election cycle, we will talk with Commissioners Court. They'll want to see these analytics. They'll want to see, what their spend will be going into the presidential cycle. Going into this May election, this is an election paid for by the joint subdivisions, and so the county won't be spending money for that, other than some low cost things using Facebook, which is pretty effective.
Yeah, well, we are in budget season, so I would hope that the election department would include this in their budget as this year.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as our tax code plan, so we're gonna finalize our mission, vision, and values, just like this, the county, piggybacking off the county. New mission, vision, and values statement, and then a branding kit, kind of branding. You can see that there's a certain look and feel to this presentation, for instance, and we do that with all of our branding us as an organization. We want to formalize our outreach plan. We've been doing the outreach, we just don't have a formalized plan at this point. Increased in-person community education involvement. We just this week hired a new outreach person, and they'll be starting soon. Increase in-person community, more aggressive and systematic BDR program to get out there and register folks. Possible upgrade of our website. Our website's pretty old technology. We don't know if we're going to get to that or not, but we'd like to. We already did hire a B2B coordinator, and but so they've done all translations. What their big focus is going to be to recruit translators at polling places. And then monitor and influence legislation. We've got Roberto back here, a college student who helps us monitor that legislation, puts everything in a great spreadsheet. We can kind of keep on top of it, give our feedback to influence that legislation. For the joint election, we're hoping we have increased the quality and frequency of our communications with the cities. We work very closely with them on the BCAP. We met with them earlier. We're in contact with them almost every day with a person dedicated for that. I mentioned the low cost use of social media. And then, because we're not doing the big spend on social media this year. Before I move on to voter registration, I want to step back 1 second something popped into my mind. Mentioned the use of analytics. And I mentioned that when we place people and equipment, we do so using the numbers. And I think what you may hear is some of our, and I know you guys hear, some of our coworkers have kind of post-traumatic, syndrome, PSTD or whatever it's called, where they'll go into a presidential or a gubernatorial, where voter turnout 65%, 45%. And, I needed 10 people. And then for an election like this upcoming election, it's 8%, 9%. And so they think, I still need 10 people. Well, the numbers say, no, you need 4. And so we have a minimum of 4 people at every location, where the numbers might even say you need 2, but we never want to have just 2 people. So I just wanted to bring that up about analytics, because I kind of bypassed that earlier. Voter registration, we didn't really do too much modification in 2022. It was status quo, tactical plan for OKR 2.25, using technology a lot more for file maintenance. Got multiple things in that OKR that our team has done. We want to revise and simplify our written communications to our voters, bring those down to like a 5th grade level, because a lot of the communications is too complex. The problem is a lot of those communications are dictated by the Secretary of State. So we're working with the Secretary of State. In fact, the Secretary of State just told us yesterday they're going to work with an outside organization called the Center for Civic Design that helps simplify our forms, our communications, etc. This is a group that I worked with 20 years ago, and they are fantastic. So I'm pretty excited about that. Improved tracking and coordination of voter registration information with NVRA agencies. So certain agencies, every government agency has to provide, by the NVRA says you have to provide certain sort of voter registration materials. A lot of those agencies don't do that. So we're going to work a little bit closer with them to help them, comply with law. This one, we have to do, unfortunately, but we have to do our RFP for our new voter registration system. Our voter registration system is very old. Our current vendor may or may not upgrade to their newest version, and but nonetheless, we're going to be doing an RFP for that new system.
Let me ask you, have you started writing the requirements for it? How old is that system?
I don't know. It's over 10 years old for sure. 20 years. It's old.
Yeah. So have you started writing the requirements for that system based on the things that you were experiencing today?
We are in the middle of that right now. We copy and steal. We copy someone else's, and then we're building upon that.
Are there on-the-shelf voter registration systems? Is that what we're looking at as purchasing one like that? We're not asking them to build something, are we?
That's correct. They're pre-built. For our mail ballot, I talked about a major change from paper to electronic. That was a huge push last year. We know that SB1 created some problems with mail ballot voters. And so what we tried to do to take those existing state required and within the law, update them, do some sort of highlighting on them. And we provided abbreviated instructions that was written similar, but Center for Civic designed with in very simple step-by-step manner. And we hope to use that to provide to the state so they can maybe mimic some of the things that we do. I already mentioned the chain of custody documentation earlier. So mail ballot applications for November, we had 14,900. 1,460 of them were rejected, way too high. And that's because they were rejected because the person did not do something that's required by the new law of SB1. So we're going to continue to educate, continue to try to drive those numbers down.
So let me ask you, so how are, with that number being as high as it is, what is it that those individuals are missing and those that creates the incomplete application?
Sure. Under SB 1, when you send in an application, you're supposed to fill out either your last four of your social or your driver's license number. And that's supposed to match up with what's on file on your voter registration. And many times it does not. So that's a rejection.
It's my understanding that they registered with their driver's license and then they filled their social, it doesn't match up because of that.
Correct.
They can't have both on file and then submit one. Or can they? Can they register with both their social and their driver's license and then when they submit their ballot, only have one of the two?
Yes, and so what,
Is it acceptable?
yes, so that's part of our education campaign is, we say, when in doubt, fill them both out. Just give us all the numbers you can, and we'll hopefully match something up.
And so can we go back now between elections, people that we don't have both for and say, we need you to update this?
Yeah, I think those are some of our, going into the presidential year in particular, we're really going to brainstorm on all those types of ideas. What can we do to bring these rejection rates down? And the Secretary of State's office is also contemplating some of these same things.
I think consistent with Fuba's question. All right.
I was gonna jump in and just add to what Mike said that.
Can you come forward to it?
Okay.
Have you considered doing like the, this is how we do it campaign for the mail-in ballot?
Well, we did work with ABI last year. The Commissioners Court did provide some money last year for this very same thing. And so we've got to look at some of the success rates of some of those.
I'm just gonna add that we've aggressively added driver's license information to voter files when they weren't previously collected. So I believe that we're, as far as counties statewide, we're one of the top two that have the most driver's license and social security numbers on file for voters. And so our numbers are pretty good at that. It's the voters filling out the envelope and not filling down the information. For some of the issues also are for elderly voters who fill out a new ID that's not a driver's license, they have a different ID number. So that's where the campaign information needs to go.
As far as mail ballots returned to carrier envelopes, we sent out 28,000. We had to resend 10,000. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. We received back 24,000 and we had to reject 602. And that was because of some of these ID issues. Now that number is still way too low, but it's considerably lower than it was. We had 6% rejection rate in the primary. We're only at 1.3% for the general. So people are starting to learn, and the campaign's having some effect, saying, when in doubt, fill it both out, doing the highlighting, doing our special instructions, et cetera. So the rejection rates are getting better.
And Mike, before you leave that, I want to make sure you weren't misunderstanding what Mr. Ames was saying a minute ago. Because what we're focused on, or what the elections department is focused on, is when in doubt, fill them both out on your mail-in ballot. What he was asking about is when you register or re-register, is there a way for us to contact people to help them to get re-registered, these mail ballot universe people, so that they put down both their social and their driver's license on their registration? But if they fail to fill them both out and they guess wrong, they still win.
I think it's a great suggestion, and that's part of the, remember, voter registration. I said we didn't do too much last year, but a big push this year is to really think through our voter registration. What can we do more aggressively to not only get more registrations, but also to make sure that those registrations are as complete and filled out as possible. And so I think that's part of our analysis. 2023. We may do an RFP to hire a vendor to print, package, and send our ballots. Vendors do this better than we can. They do it cheaper than we can. There's just not a ton of vendors. Texas is not a big vote by mail state. So there's not a lot of vendors that provide that sort of service here, but we hope to maybe do that in the future. Revision of our mail ballot application process. We're kind of looking through, to make sure that we're bulletproof there. We redid the carrier envelope side, but we haven't really redone the application process side. And then the full implementation of a new ballot tracking through the mail system. So back in 2009, when I was in Denver, our vendor failed to mail 18,000 ballots. And we never do it. Until people started calling and saying, where's my ballot? And I said at the time, man, I can track my ballot and I can track a package through UPS. Why can't I track it a mail ballot? Someone's got to do this. Someone's got to provide this service. And lo and behold, no one did. So what we did is we partnered with a local company. We invented mail ballot tracking. And so that a person can you put an IMV barcode on the outgoing and incoming ballots, and you can track that ballot every step of the way where it's at. You know where the ballot's at in the mail system. Not only do we know it, but then the voter themselves can sign up for emails, text messages, or robo to say your ballot's been printed today, your ballot's been delivered to the post office today, your ballot's being delivered to your house today, that kind of thing. And so that system that we built in 2009 is now peddled around the country. I think there's like 36 million people that use it. And so we wanted to implement that here. For this joint election, we're doing a pilot project with that vendor, called my old friends, Steve Wolfus, and said, let's get this done here in Dallas. And so we're doing it on the outgoing side. The outgoing envelopes, we're tracking where they're at in the mail system. To do the incoming side, we got to work with the Secretary of State to reinvent the envelope and how we're going to put the IMVs on it. So there's lots to work out, but we're well on our way to getting there long term. Voting sites team, going into this last election, it was rough last year. We lost key players. We were mostly temps. Going into the November election, we had a little bit more stability, better communications with our phone, email procedures and stuff. We're really stabilized a lot more now with new staff. But November was still a little bit rough, not bad. We had phase 1 of our software development collaboration software with the parties. The parties are our partners, and they're working with these poll workers just as much as we are. Problem was that they would talk to them, we would talk to them, our records didn't match. So we built software that we're all using the same software in real time. They can see the same thing that we're seeing. They can know who's been contacted and who's committed, et cetera, et cetera. We have that in, we also have poll worker mapping software where people can, look for available people nearby a location to try to assign the right poll worker, et cetera. So it's worked really well for the November election. We also collaborated with parties, Power to the Polls, Vet the Vote for recruitment. And for that last election, as you can see, we needed, we had 3,493 voters or workers. We had 347 extra that went to training, were ready to work, but we didn't need them. So that was a real success story thanks to the parties and their recruitment efforts. We also collaborated with the county employees for backup poll workers in case we had any shortages, but we didn't need to use them. The tactical plan for voting sites, we want to do phase 2. We're in the middle of phase 2. We're rebuilding this vendor. We're getting rid of the vendor software. We're building our own software for managing poll workers. This last year was huge. This was an OKR also. Huge success where our voting sites team built an application, put it on an iPad to, I think it consisted of over 90 questions where we went to all over 500 of our polling locations and resurveyed them. Number of available parking spots, ADA compliance, taking pictures, taking videos, giving us intelligence about our locations that we didn't have before. And we completed those evaluations in March. February, March, and we handed all of that information over to the Vote Center Advisory Committee. Vote Center Advisory Committee this year. They gaveled down or presented to Commissioners Court. Commissioners Court accepted what's called a small turnout model. And they will meet again in May, and they will start to develop a large turnout. So we'll fluctuate up and down with the number of vote centers. But this will, I think the small turnout model was 370, and the large turnout model will be 450-ish or more. We'll see. And so that remains to be seen. Go ahead.
Well, the difference between the small turnout and the large turnout will certainly be a countywide election or a federal election versus a municipal election, school board election, correct?
That's correct. We'll probably go to Commissioners Court and say, we got an election coming, you want it smaller, large turnout.
So, and I understand that you engage the parties, and likely so, because they're in this process all the time. There was some question about engaging the parties in the small turnout election, because those are nonpartisan elections.
Yeah.
Would you explain to this commission why you engage the parties and how that plays into the large one?
Sure. Texas law is funny in that it does a lot of shifting back and forth. This type of election, you're supposed to operate this way. This type of election, you're supposed to operate this way. Different authorities authorizing the election, et cetera, et cetera. Well, our poll workers, they got a habit of dealing with the parties. And so even though this is not a party election, they're still calling the parties. And so we continue to be partners with the parties for these types of elections, even though they're not partisan. And so we're taking their advice. We're not, for a primary election, they tell us exactly who's going to work if they're the boss. For these types of elections, we're kind of more the boss, but we're still taking their good advice.
So the calls go into the party or for what information?
Typically, the poll workers are asking, if typically.
It's in the middle. It's that realm of the line.
Put your glasses on first. There you go.
Good.
There we
There's just poll workers, on either side are normally calling us for specific information, and so it's a little bit habitual that they call. They know the people that they're working with at the parties, so we obviously send them to the elections department when it's needed. We answer any of the questions that we have that we can answer.
Well, and I appreciate that for both parties because, at the end of the day, they're almost like the contract employment agencies for elections, right? And so for you guys to say, sorry, we're not handling it this week, call in this week, but hey, call us back in 2 weeks is difficult and confusing. So I appreciate that both parties. Go ahead, Jim.
No, it is confusing, and I think that this process, so as Carla may, confirm, people get used to working together in certain places and they like to stay there.
Yep.
And what we've found is that the more they work together, the better it works in the polling place because people get along better and become friends. And so we try to keep that as consistent as possible. But that being said, because this is a municipal election, the elections department does have to move people around some, and there are not as many workers needed. So, the elections department makes those decisions, but they just collaborate with us. We're just trying to keep our workers as happy as possible. So we want them to keep going back.
And how was that conveyed to the municipalities?
We worked with Mr. Palomo prior to the election, and we have a contract. They contract with us to run their elections for us. And those details are worked out within that contract. And then, of course, we meet with the jurisdictions, and most of those jurisdictions, they just pretty much say, you guys run it. Wherever you have it. And every so often we'll get a city secretary that says, I want a particular person here or there, and we like David. Lastly, with voting sites, this year, for the joint election, we're going to have jail-based voting at Frank Crowley. And so we're pretty excited about that. This will be a pretty pilot, and we'll see, getting ready for the big presidential next year.
I do have a question. I was asking Judge Jenkins, is that for inmates or is that for, employees? And
It's for both.
For both. Okay.
That's right.
So, so that means you're gonna have, voting machines in the towers as well as in the, logistically, how are you placing, voting machines?
We went down a week or two ago, and visited with the sheriff's office, and they specified exactly where we're gonna be. It was in a certain, I couldn't tell you where it is, because I don't remember. It was down there, I just don't remember.
Probably, I'm having a problem with the 200-foot marker at those locations. Mr. Heupel, come forward, please.
Mr. Scarpello, just for the record, because we're saying people in jail, the right to vote. And if I'm in line here and I'm thinking, oh my God, people are convicted or voting, if you just clarify what you mean by people in jail who have the right to vote, please.
Sure. So someone in prison convicted of a felony does not have the right to vote. Someone in jail, who hasn't been convicted yet, but they're being held, does have a right to vote.
Yeah.
They can vote by mail up to a certain point, but then after that, they can't vote by mail anymore. So when they were being held in jail without being able to get out to vote, they were being deprived of their right to vote. So that's why certain activist groups and commissioners, et cetera, all really encouraged us in the sheriff's office to open this location. And I think we're only the second in the state after Harris County to do so. Okay. So training team, of course, going into 2022, we have a new training facility, beautiful facility next door. Thanks, Mr. Heupel, for driving that. Implemented, SEAC had the training subcommittee. They had suggestions. We implemented those. We revised our train the trainer program. We revised our smartphone training, that we give to the judges, and our provisional ballot training. And I would say this is on top of the completely revised training from, about a year and a half ago, but this is just for the general, what we developed new recorded equipment training, new safety and security training to go with our security plan. And we ended up training 3,200 workers. For 2023, our tax.
I apologize. A couple of years ago, training was a real issue with the elections department. And I know that was one of your main functions coming in.
Right.
So we revamped the training program. We got some more consistency with it. What is the feedback now from the training program?
When we did our initial revisions, we had a survey, and we, on a scale of 1 to 5, and I think and it was outstanding. I think we had an average of 4.6 ratings of that training. But the critical pieces we took, that's why we continue to refine. So going into the November election, these are the revisions that we have going into November. Going into this year, we have even more. We've got new e-poll book training, and then I think we've got a new poll opening and closing introduction video. So we continue to, with adult learners, you really try to hit them as many ways as possible. Some written, some visual, some hands-on, and then videos. And so if you hit them in as many ways as possible, it's more effective. So then logistics team, we consolidated 3 election warehouses into 2 locations here. We've been developing a lot of paper checklists for those teams to make sure, it used to be, well, we're just putting stuff in the box. And so now we have checklists and accountability to make sure that everything's there or not. Last year was very difficult. We had those 2 elections that were 17 days apart, countywide elections, and the turnaround to figure that out was amazing. Our logistics team did a really good job with that. Provisional envelopes in the general election, we had 14,000 to serve for 3,000 voters, but we had scattered shortages. There was 6 college locations that there was unexpected high volumes. Of course, we reacted to that and sent more out. But then we had some logistics team errors that were caused in certain locations. They didn't pack as many as they were supposed to. Of course, well, we went back to their checklist and said, where's your checklist? And we're working with them now. And then we reacted, and we're working with that team to, identify their errors and to avoid those errors in the future. We're developing digitized checklists. We're hoping to, we're not quite there yet. Inventory control for election supplies. We're hoping to finalize our move out of Langdon Street warehouse. We still have records, election records from that we had litigation holds on. I think those litigation holds are now being released. And so we can kind of get out of Langdon Street warehouse for good sometime in the future. And we're finishing surplusing our remaining obsolete equipment and supplies. I think we've had 10 dumpsters out of our Langdon Street warehouse, full of old stuff. And so we continue to do that.
If I can, as it relates to the tactical plan and the logistics team, it was mentioned earlier by one of the speakers that they have 1 hour to set up. And in a lot of instances, the location is not prepared to be set up. Can we kind of like incorporate making sure that those election locations are prepped and ready? So when the election team, the election judge comes in to set up equipment, that everything is clear, the space is ready, and it's ready for them to use. I've assisted with setting up some election locations, and it is primarily women that are doing the work, and it's disheartening that it's a lot of work and effort that has to be done by women when there are very few men available. So can we kind of like make sure that that's part of the plan by either the tactical team working together with the logistics team to make sure that that's addressed?
And that's a great suggestion. And let me tell you what we haven't done. So what we've done first and foremost is provide a plan, a checklist. If you do it in this order, according to the plan, you will be more efficient in setting, number one. Number two, we recognize that fact that modern day elections with all this equipment takes a lot longer to set up. It's heavy and everything else. And the law prevented us from paying people for more than an hour prior to the election. And the law stated that. And so the law is antiquated. There was no penalties in the law, so we kind of ignored them. And we said, you can set up early. And so we encouraged people to set up prior to election day. And we kind of asked them to do it on their own time, which wasn't really fair. So we went to Commissioner's Court. We now pay people to set up prior to election day. So they can set up, they can come the night before, set up, get paid for that 1 hour, every member of their staff. And then they can also get paid for that 1 hour prior, at 6 a.m. from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. or even as early as 5:30. So they've got up to 2.5 hours to set up prior to the election now.
And in some instances, that's a good approach, but in some instances, it's borrowed space. Whoever's facility it is, they may be using it the day before, and they don't have the resources to prepare it for an election. Is there an opportunity to send an email or kind of a reminder? Hey, we need this space cleared. You've agreed to have elections at this location. Can you agree to have the space cleared based on what we've discussed? If you've had the discussion about having the open space so that the election equipment can be staged and them being out without violating the law as it relates to that 1 hour.
That's another good suggestion. And I know my team's taking notes, but I know that one of the reasons we did the survey is with our electronic surveys, now we have better intelligence about those locations. Do they have stuff that needs to be cleared out, et cetera, et cetera? So we've got the information, now we gotta use it. So it's a good suggestion, that's right.
That's right.
Right. So moving to our central count team, we had a brand new layout of our central count station, more space, more equipment, more monitors, seating, making it really user friendly, not only for us, but for our poll watchers. New comprehensive, this is for the general election. Comprehensive central counting station operating plan. So it used to be just kind of a shell of a plan, and now we put all the details in there. And so when we have poll watchers and they have questions, we just say, look at the plan. Here's the plan. We're operating according. a new live streaming of our website, of those locations. Anywhere ballots are handled, those are on our website. And that's by law, that wasn't just our choice. Migration away from dependence on ES&S, our election vendor. They used to do all the work, now we're doing the work and they're supervising it. Faster and more reliable USB results, stakes handling procedures, that kind of addresses some of those issues from the audit, and as well as speed of getting election results. We collaborated with parties to manually count 160,000 write-in ballots for the 301st Judicial District, and that was amazing. Typically, you're counting 400 or 500 write-ins, and because the parties found the volunteers, came to training, we hand counted those 160,000 ballots, which was unprecedented. So I was pretty happy about that. New comprehensive canvas process that balanced the books. I kind of talked about that earlier, of us, dotting our I's, crossing our T's, making sure that we've accounted for everything. Issues in the general election, I mentioned this earlier. In our existing proofing process, the staff was not used to proofing write-in lines. The last write-in we had was 2018. And the current staff, they made an error. And felt horrible about it, and we had to resend those 10,000 mail ballots. That was a big issue. And then the second issue was our election equipment. ES&S had a technical issue regarding, it's getting deep, I can't explain it all, but they had a technical error that didn't affect the outcome of any elections, but it did affect back what they call cast vote records, images. The images weren't all there. So they had to really dig in. ES&S did. We worked with our attorneys to make sure that issue was fixed going into the next election. In fact, we're still in the middle of that. 2023 tactical plan. We just upgraded our ballot tabulation hardware. We got all new computers. We are now, our staff for this election learned how to design and program our own ballots rather than relying on the vendor to do it. We're in the middle, and we've mostly completed the revision of our ballot proofing process. It was pretty much by memory. Now it's all documented, checklists, et cetera, et cetera. We've created a backup vote tabulation location in case we have fire or tornado or whatever, so we can still count ballots somewhere else.
There was some discrepancy about who was in charge of verifying the accuracy of the ballots in the last election. Did we get some clarification, whether it was the SOS, whether it was Dallas County elections, whether it was the parties?
Definitely, I'm glad you brought that up, because I didn't put that in the presentation, but I just forgot about it. But that issue was that someone filed with the Republican Party that it was put deputy before his name,
They
right?
used the title.
Title. And that was accepted. It was given to the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State accepted it. He went on the ballot in the primary. No one noticed. Then after that, he won. And then it came for the general election. It came to us, here's your ballot. And we ran with what the state tells us by law. And so then some people said, well, why didn't we catch that? And our response was, that's not our job. And that's not part of our proofing process, because that's supposed to be caught way early, like in December, before the following November's election. So legally, I think it might be nice for us to do that, but I think legally it's always risky to take on more responsibility than you're legally required to do so. So that's still a discussion whether or not we want to modify for that.
So there hasn't been final clarification on it then.
No, it was missed by everybody at the initial stage. I think part of the reason we didn't get complete clarification is that gentleman lost in the general, so it wasn't necessarily an issue that had to be, In other words, it didn't create an inequity. It could have, but it didn't.
I agree, it ended well. It did better than it could have, had there been a situation turned out the other way, and then there could have been lots of lawsuits and discrepancies.
But I can tell you we're gonna pay a lot closer attention next time.
Well,
How about that?
and I was gonna say, is it, being put into the procedures that even though it may not be your statutory responsibility to catch that, but to maybe bring it to the attention of the parties, or maybe ask further clarification to the SOS? Because if I recall, the SOS pretty much said, you didn't catch it either, so why are you getting on that?
The SOS was wrong. And so I think that's further discussions that we're gonna have with our legal department on whether or not we should take on that responsibility. Develop procedural steps to catch vendor equipment read errors. We've experienced those read errors on some of those sticks, so we're trying to just catch those things when the equipment doesn't work properly. 2023 joint election. So I mentioned that it's the first time that staff has programmed the ballots. And then in addition to our Central County and Station operating plan, we also do a daily log where if we can always go back into the record and we know, it's basically a daily journal, so we know exactly what's going on minute by minute. Election hardware team, we utilize ESNS as trainers, and we brought in GTS, a specialized contractor for technical labor, which we used to use a temp agency that didn't have as many experts. So the GTS, the higher level technical labor was much better. We expanded our warehouse space. This warehouse that we're in now is all of our electronic equipment. The warehouse across the street is all of everything other than electronic equipment, so it's much more organized now. We can get to it, rotate it, etc. Work on it a lot better. New election equipment preparation checklist, so there's accountability and we can make sure that things are programmed properly. Revised and expanded our hardware response team. That's that infrastructure I talked about within this room. Improvement, so it ended up improving in all of our hardware statistical categories. So here's the stats: electronic poll books, we had 2183 deployed. Preparation issues, we had 0.8% preparation issues, 6.1 technical issues that we're talking to our vendor about. And then user error issues, 1.6%. We always look at the user error stuff because that means what can we improve in our training. There was an issue with the e-poll books by our vendor. They did not, we're in negotiations with them right now with our legal department. What they've kind of fessed up to was that their infrastructure, their server, they didn't have enough servers. They've been expanding, selling more and more of their equipment. They didn't have enough servers to handle the load on election day. And so what that meant was someone came in, checked into an e-poll book. They looked them up, properly checked them in. That information was downloaded to a central server. And it's supposed to be then uploaded to all the rest of the computers in the entire county, including the one right next to it. And that upload was slow because the traffic, the servers couldn't handle it. And so what that resulted in at the end at 7 o'clock, when people stopped downloading, the servers had the time to catch up. So it looked like at 7:05, 7:15, 7:20, it looked like people were voting. So from a perception issue, it was bad because the poll watchers were saying there's people voting after 7 o'clock. When that wasn't the case. After the election, members of the Republican Party, whole groups of them came in, audited all our books. They were satisfied that everything balanced out okay, that there were not people coming after 7 o'clock voting. We're working with ESNS. They've made assurances that they've increased their service size. They've created a separate network just for Texas so that we're not being shared with the rest of the country.
Are we the largest county that uses ESNS? Or do they also service Harris?
We're the largest county that uses their ESNS poll book, I think.
is there a way for us to ask for, servers that are specifically designated to Dallas County?
Well, that's what they did. They're doing it specifically to Texas and they divorced it from the rest of the country.
Well, and even more specific to that, for example, the software that I use in the tax office has 2 servers that are dedicated to Dallas County. Doesn't serve any other counties in the state of Texas, only Dallas County. Is there a way to ask, they segment a certain amount of servers that are just dedicated to Dallas County?
We're still in negotiations with them, with Mr. Blomo, so I. Could you move on?
Yeah, it can be asked.
Yeah, and I would just clarify, I'm not sure that the Republican Party was really satisfied with the explanation or the result. One of the issues that happened that was very disturbing is that these e-poll surged to many, many voters over what the paper rosters indicated. And it was not possible to completely reconcile them because when everything came back to the elections department, there were many paper rosters missing. So I will commend Mr. Scarpello for allowing us wide access to try to come in and become satisfied with it, but I'm not 100% sure there was complete resolution. But I certainly second Mr. Ames' suggestion. I think Dallas County should have its own server. We're what, 7th, 8th largest county in the country? We should have our own server.
The voting,
That we can monitor, that the elections department can monitor.
And a primary and backup server.
yeah, there's that one back. Voting machines, we deployed 3,900, did 2% preparation issues, 2.8% technical issues, 1% user error, pretty good numbers. Our vote tabulators, 515 deployed, 4.6% preparation issues, 6.4% technical issues, and user error issues, 10.3%. A lot of, so we've got some training issues, right?
So when you say technical issues, is that hardware issues? Is it software issues? Is it vendor issues?
Hardware issues.
Hardware issues, yeah. And so is it because the machines aren't that old, right?
2019.
So is that something where we need to look at upgrading the equipment? Is that something where the vendor, they're still under warranties? Does the vendor have, a quota they have to meet in a certain percentage of?
So we just had all that equipment serviced. And the funny thing was, the simplest little thing, that 10%, or that, I'm sorry, 6% of the technical issue, what most of it ended up being is they have a place where there's a cord that is wrapped with a basically a rubber band to hold it in place in the back of the machine. And those things were getting stretched out and the cord was falling and getting in the path of the travel of the ballots, which was causing some jamming issues. So all that's been fixed, but it's just one of those things, the ESNS said, right, never had that happen before, I mean, it's just one of those things, I guess.
As it relates to the hardware, is that a purchase or a lease?
Purchased. All the machinery was purchased in 2019 and 2020.
And typically, a hardware refresh is done every 5 years. Have you considered moving to leased equipment so that you don't have to dispose of it and then you get new equipment after 4 years or 5 years? I understand that when it comes to the hardware and logistics teams moving it, it's gonna get it's shaking around. So there's always an opportunity for something to happen.
Right.
But I think you should probably look, see if it's more cost effective to lease the equipment versus buying it, so that because with the lease, once your lease is up, whomever is the owner of that equipment, they'll come pick it up and they'll deliver new equipment.
Right. I think right now we've been talking with the vendor, what is the lifespan of that, of that equipment, and they're saying 10 years. We'll see as we look at our rates of.
But again, like I said, if the equipment is sitting still, yes, that may work.
Right.
But no hardware, nothing survives 10 years. But the fact that it's being transported, then of course that's going to also add to the wear and tear.
That's absolutely right. We'll be in discussions with county administration budget, kind of talk about that, giving them a heads up when we think there may be, and who knows, as of right now, unless legislation is passed, Their current law, all of our equipment becomes obsolete by 2026. So they're looking to fix that law, but that's the current law as it stands now.
This equipment qualifies for chapter 19 funds, right?
Certain equipment does, but not.
No.
Chapter 19 is voter registration only. 2023 tactical plan, continued improvement in the promptness and quality of our technical repair services. Continued automation of our hardware help desk. We got everything mapped out. We have people, and we know where they're at. We have cell phones that track where they're at, et cetera. We upgraded all of our equipment to the newest versions of the software this year, just a month or so ago. And for the 23 joint election, we are using new electronic management system for our inventory and storage of our equipment. So we know where all the equipment is on the racks, because it's all beeped in, et cetera. And then migration to a new AT&T private access point name. I have no idea what that means. Currently in support. GIS team, I talked about the redistricting. There was round 1, round 2. They continue to, that was for the general election. We did hire an outside vendor to prove our staff's precinct lines, and that vendor was very helpful. We consolidated our sub precincts to reduce unnecessary proofing. So there was a lot of stray precincts, where there's no voters there. So it's just doing cleanup of that. We continue to build multiple GIS tools. Our GIS team is fantastic. These tools are really great to look at stuff in real time and to put a geospatial component to everything we do. And then some of those included those GIS tools to assist the public. So, as part of our education campaign, it's before you vote, use our tool, look and see what the wait times are, and then get driving directions to that location. So our wait time tool was used for both the early voting and election day. The average wait time was 1.2 minutes for early voting and 3.7 minutes for election day, which is really low. So that's really great. And we think the usage of that wait time tool was heavy. 1 in 2 voters during early voting used it, which was really high. 2023 tactical plan is around.
If I can, at the 3.7 minutes, there's an asterisk. What is that for?
That means all of our judges filled out their wait time tickets. And so, if we had, I'm making up numbers, of our 462 locations, we might have 400 that were actually reporting. So those that weren't reporting might bump that up. So that's an issue that we've got to address with those judges. You got to fill out those wait time tickets to help the public. 2023 tactical plan, round 3 of the city boundary, redistricting we talked about already. Software tech support for general election. We stabilized the infrastructure. This is one of our OKRs. We had phase 1 of the DHS. We had DHS come in and audit us. And they do that for free, and they do an incredibly thorough job. Consolidation of our telecommunications plans and billings saved hundreds of thousands of dollars by kind of renegotiating those contracts. And we developed these Power BI reports where we got all these systems everywhere. So for our non-technical users, it's very difficult to use. So our technical team now is pulling these Power BI reports where they're pulling everything together to make them really easy to pull this data and have consistent data, so we're not screwing something up using spreadsheets. This guy is using this version of a spreadsheet. This guy is using this version of a spreadsheet. So it's a very effective tool. So for our 2023 tactical plan, we're going to continue that vulnerability assessment and remediation plans. We have these collaborative tools using SharePoint where we have shared information, our e-date, our tactical plan, et cetera, where people do things collaboratively. We're going to finalize our debt, our COOP, our debtor recovery plan. We're going to replace our current inventory system, where we replaced our current inventory system already from a vendor, we built our own. We wanted to create more technical training coursework, leveraging LinkedIn Learning. And then develop customized software training for our internally developed software. So that's the end of my presentation. I just wanted to say that everything we did, we had to collaborate with, and I want to thank those that we did, including the Dallas County voters, Commissioners Court, the Election Commission, or the participating cities and school districts, Secretary of State, our SEAC, our VCAC, those committees, county administration, and our sister county agencies, HR, purchasing, et cetera, political parties, poll workers, activist groups, and most importantly, our VCED staff that really has aggressively jumped into making these fixes. That's all I have.
We've asked our questions along the way. Only thing we have, meaning I think, is the org chart. Gordon and Mike made some changes to the org chart. I think it's basically the same, but it has more people. Sorry. So on pages 40, if you guys want to formalize this, pages 47 and 48 is the proposed org chart. It's been worked over by administration and election. Anybody have a problem with that?
I think, Judge, last time we talked about the basics of this, and so I'm glad that we're formalizing that. I see that it is a dotted line to Mr. Heupel, because technically we can't reassign responsibility. But Mr. Heupel can work daily with Mr. Scarpello and his team, answer questions, and then provide feedback to the Elections Commission. And of course, we can continue to have meetings like this. I think at Mr. Scarpello's request at one of our previous meetings, he was seeking, who's the person that I need to be talking to, or do I need to be talking to 17 people all at once? That's obviously from the slide before this, you work with several other agencies too. So I get that. Mr. Warren and I report to 2.6 million people. Those are the judges.
And I will just say this, Mr. Heupel and I have a great relationship. We talk, if not daily, every other day. And I bring him in, for those things that are high level, and whether it's Commissioners Court, other county agencies, and, we'll argue it through it. We get it, we'll do battle, we'll do lunch, we'll do, and it's a great working relationship. And I'm really grateful for his.
As it relates to the org chart, before we can do anything as it relates to codifying, I do want to hear from our legal counsel as it relates to the structure as it is and how he would advise this being. If you all remember, this was the reason we did this was for having effective communication, established structure as it relates to what the expectations of this commission, the Commissioners Court, and all the other entities that we work with. Because at the end of the day, when we make decisions, we have to make decisions based on some facts. That's what we want to be able to have with those facts. So if Mr. Palermo wants to add anything to, I'm assuming it's the org chart that's on page 48, correct?
48. So you're talking about 47 and 48. So
Yes.
That's the one. I have no further comments. If the commission wants to. I have no further comments. If the commission wants further details, we can meet in closed session and discuss.
Need for that, it's just, it is what it is, it's the org chart. And it falls.
I'm comfortable with it as presented on 47 and 48.
Okay, is there a motion?
Jennifer, you have?
Oh, yeah.
I'm not comfortable with the explanation. The chart doesn't bother me, but there's some things in the explanation that I have some.
Yeah,
questions too.
so we would be, we voted on 47 and 48 to revise org chart. Then 49 and 50 would not be a part of that. So 48 and 49 is what's if somebody moves it and seconds it, that would be what's before us, and then 49 and 50 for the first draft of that. basically. Is there a motion that we adopt the org chart as written by Mr. Scarpello and Gordon, Mr. Michael on 47 and 48?
A motion.
Second.
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Guys, I believe that is it. Thanks everyone for your patience and all your hard work. Working's team, everyone who's here and everyone who's listening or not. Please let them all know how much we appreciate it. It's hard right now. You just saw this in Tarrant County. It's hard to be an elections administrator. Anybody on that team, so we really, it's appreciated. Thanks everyone. We're good.
Okay.